I talked to Barry Austin. He is a pro mountain bike coach to international mountain bike athletes. And we're going to talk about the law of averages. And we share and discuss 3 key traits needed to perform at your absolute best and taking your financial planning practice and business and your value proposition to a completely new level. This is Propulsion, the podcast for forward-thinking and driven and ambitious financial planning professionals. It is the catalyst to the exponential growth of your financial planning practice, your business, or your franchise. This is where professionals come in order to learn about the latest technology, to learn about best practice when it comes to running and managing their business, as well as marketing, sales, relationship building, the best and most valuable interviews with local and international guests, and a whole host of other things. Without any further ado, here is your host, Francois du Toit. Good morning, Barry.
Morning, Francois. Morning, everybody.
I was saying warm welcome to the show, Barry. I think I spoke to you about being on the show a while back, a long time ago. I said, would you ever be willing to come on the show? And you said yes. And then everything just happened and life happened. And then about a year later, you and I caught up when I was in Cape Town for December. And then, we had all these amazing sort of conversations. And that just screamed at me and said, man, you got to come on the show. So thank you so much. I don't think this is in your natural sort of arena. Nope. So this is something else for you.
Yeah, totally new. But yeah, let's try.
Yeah, absolutely. So Barry and I actually went to school together. And I must say, and I've said to him, please thank your mom for me every time I see him. Because if it wasn't for his mom, I wouldn't be able to present today in English. She's the one that taught me English. And not at school. My mom actually sent me for extra English classes to Barry's mom in Henneman. So that's where we're all from. And we used to spend, and I can remember Barry being this young, when we were still boys, I think we were obviously in high school, and then you always saw Barry on his bicycle. I think he was the first guy in Henneman to have a road cycling bike, not a normal, these wide handled bikes or some BMX or something. He was the guy in a cycling kit on this, and you saw him every single day, and that was at school. And today, Barry, you've had such an interesting career up to now, ups and downs, and things that didn't always just go your way. And so I want to get into a lot of that. But before I talk too much, just maybe a brief introduction about who you are.
I'm a UCI level 3 coach, but obviously that's just a qualification that you do in a course in Switzerland. I started in road cycling as a coach, really interested into try and find out how to develop South African athletes in the international arena and what we were lacking and what we need to do to grow from the local scene. And that developed later into becoming a performance manager on some of the pro teams, just studying efficiency and trying to figure out what's the best way to get the most out of an athlete in terms of using the environment and the athlete's physical and mental abilities. And that then, I left the coaching a little bit in that period. It was just after I became the national cycling manager at the London Olympics. After that, just into pro cycling. And then from there, I met an athlete who really asked me really pushed me back into the coaching arena and inspired me to take it up again full time. It's about 7 years ago, and been working on that. A lot of my coaching moved into the mountain biking side. It was really exciting. It's a really new field, lots of challenges, and just grew from that onwards. And I tried to really see from an outsider's perspective into that sport, from road cycling to mountain bike, and what they were missing, and try to help with that. And through that, it started moving in towards helping corporate clients getting the most out of their time that they have. So they didn't have the hours and hours that pros had. And I wanted to see what I can do to typically help a corporate with a really difficult, busy lifestyle go and ride the epic in an enjoyable fashion. And then, the passion grew from that in solving those problems. And now I coach people from absolute beginners right through to world champions. So super nice journey.
Yeah, it's such an amazing story. But I want to take you back, for so many of us, right? If you think where we come from, so we were born in 1975. So it means that we finished primary school in the late 80s, then went to high school. And sort of that was still early 90s when we finished high school. Because luckily Barry and I we passed every single year. So luckily it didn't took too long. net. But yeah, so we did that. And at that time, I think if you think about that, was just as the internet became something. So, I mean, the information at hand, the opportunities, the possibilities, we all did those. What are you sort of, those aptitude tests that you do, and you sort of say, oh, this, and then the answers come, and then they say, oh, you can do anything. Like we all got those answers, and mom and dad paid quite an amount for those tests, right? But then, I mean, your thing also took this sort of turn where you sort of went and studied something else, sort of like many other parents would insist, like, listen, go do, and like, how can you make money from cycling, or how can you make money from talking about Smurfs, or how can you make money from whatever it is that we were passionate about and what we're into. And you went and studied engineering, right?
Yeah. So I got a bursary from Anglo American, went to study engineering, but used some of the bursary funds that I got extra to study just physical education at nighttime. And and when I was done with that, I actually just left for Europe, packed everything, and sold all my little car, sold that, got on a plane, and took my bike and wanted to see what it's like to race a bike in Europe.
Yeah, and that's the amazing thing, right? So I think, and I'll get to why I sort of bring this into the story, because it's for me an important thing that you and I spoke about in December or in early January, because we saw each other twice, was this whole thing around, you sort of, this is what you want to go and do, or at least this is what you want to go and explore, because like, I mean, Barry, you are one of the most curious people that I know. And you haven't stopped since we were at school. I always learned the most wonderful things from you, because you were always into learning something new. And from our conversation, I gather that just simply hasn't stopped. I think, in fact, it's become, I won't say worse, but it's definitely become more of a thing for you, and we'll get into that. But years later, so you do this engineering thing on the insistence, and then you pack up everything, you go to Europe, you go and experience travel, do a lot of things there, do what you want to do. And then later on, you get into this coaching thing. But there's one specific thing where we actually spoke about. There was this new thing that came about, and because of your engineering background and because of this new technology that came in, you said a lot of coaches didn't understand what that was and what it could do. So sort of talk me a little bit through that, because that was such an interesting thing where, because the lesson in it for me is that sometimes we do things that we don't want to do, and we don't see the value, and we don't see why I should even do this. And years later, suddenly two things come together. So talk me a little bit through that.
Yeah, so basically, when I went to Europe, I discovered, okay, what we do here in biking and what they do there is totally different, and we need to find ways to get up to speed. And it's mostly to do with their racing is on really tight and difficult terrain, and we've got really open spaces, not a lot of turns, big bunches. We have small bunches, so I had to try and figure out ways. So that was sort of like that curious mind of mine that started working over time. And then as I started settling into the coaching business, the power meters were invented and introduced into the market. And suddenly, where people with coaching was like, let's call it, it's physiology and biology, and that was the majors. Suddenly, engineering stepped in, and the law of physics in terms of how these things work and what does it mean, and what does a power meter really tell you. And that's where the engineering helped me really quickly to connect the two. And I think that's where my teaching took a big leap forward, because suddenly when people were still trying to figure out how to use this new tool, I took the opportunity through something that I really didn't actually want to do, but I was fortunate enough to have done it. And I could incorporate it into the coaching and immediately see really good results, because I could make a definite pattern and plan in terms of the programming from the engineering side. And it was a super exciting time, and it was really nice to see sort of like you were doing something on, I would say, small scale or a small personal scale with some athletes, and then later on you'd see literature coming out of, this is the way a training plan should look with a power meter, and you're like, oh no, we did that. Oh yeah, that's something that we tried as well, and we developed it in this direction. So I've never been a big extrovert or marketer of stuff. So it was really nice to see those things being introduced at a later stage. But you've covered that part already, and that journey from engineering to to coaching, it was an interesting one, and it's still one I use to this day, in terms of figuring out algorithms for efficiency and for adaptation to environment.
Yeah, and that's such an important thing. And it's yeah, my mind is still blown around how amazing it is that suddenly these two things, because now it meant that you were, I don't know if light years is maybe the right, or if it's a fair comment, but I mean, you were quite a lot ahead of other people, and now for others to catch up to you, I think becomes so difficult because you are already ahead. And now while you're learning new things, they're trying to learn what you've already figured out. So you always that sort of, as long as you keep learning, you stay ahead. Is that sort of a fair comment?
Yeah, so as long as you're curious, exactly. So you just keep on staying curious, and then you'll stay ahead. I mean, there's a thing about arrived. It's the same thing I say to a lot of my athletes. The medal ceremony is 10 or 1 minute long, but learning is a lifetime. Or growing and improving yourself is a lifetime experience. So if you're just riding just for the medal ceremony, that feeling and that bliss is nice, but it doesn't carry you every day. It doesn't motivate you to get up and go do the job every day. But getting up and doing it and knowing that today I know more and I am more, that satisfaction is something that I really feed off of. It's just the energy between people and growing from that. So taking that, it helped me. I think the negative side is that if I had the platform of support around me, I could have made something really big of it in the beginning already. So it took some time, but that's how all of our lives work this way. So the platform maybe wasn't there, but I stayed curious enough to carry on.
And you know what? I think there's more value in that, Barry. I'll tell you why. So I had a discussion. I attended a session quite a while back, but the guy who started Vujo's Wors. So, there was that advert, obviously on TV about Vujo's Wors, but there's a guy that actually then went there, he bought the brand, and he started this Boerewors shop, if you will, in different places. So he started off, and we were talking about, because a lot of people will start a business, they raise money, they like having resources and people and things get involved, and they build this thing very, very quickly. And sometimes it still fails, and sometimes it works. So you're never guaranteed in any event. But we were talking about that after this thing, and I was talking to him, and we were saying, like, it's because he showed a graph to say, like, how long did it take him? It took like 7 years before there's even any kind of breakout. Now, I personally believe that there's more value in that taking longer than it is getting there quicker, because you really get to know the ins and outs, and you really get to go through the challenges and the struggles, and you really build character in that time, because nobody's making it easy for you. And I think, yes, we could do more things more quickly, but I think the value, like once you now get going, once that hockey stick effect starts taking effect, it's like, it's fine. I think you make up for that time, although it doesn't always feel like it.
Yeah, I think I would say what it did help me do is, because you explore, you go like a lot of little rabbit holes you go down. This thing is the new thing. That thing is the thing that will help the most. You do this, and it's nutrition, and it's, equipment, and just going all over the show. And then later on, you just realize it's the human, and you sort of, and all those small things, they play a small part, but none of those small things become a big thing. And that's what I think the biggest lesson I've taken from it. The big thing is the person, and the small things stay the small things. So some small things make a big performance difference at the top level, but it will always be a small thing. And I think that journey helped me with that part.
Yeah, and just because it's a small thing doesn't mean it's not important. I think that's a big part of it. Yeah. So let's get into this human thing, right? There's one particular thing. I laughed so hard. I remember, like, it was so brilliant for me. Like, when we spoke about this thing about being average and not being average, like that for me is a conversation that I want to have over and over with you. But, just from that point, if you think about it, I mean, in pro sports, so let's just, I think in anywhere in life, so whether it's your professional, whether you just in your career or your personal life or anything like that, being average, simple doesn't cut it. I mean, it's for me as simple as that. But you have a very particular philosophy about this, and specifically in your personal life and your family life and so forth as well. So there's no place for average there. I know. So I mean, what is this philosophy, and why is it so important to you, Barry?
Yeah, so basically, my kids, they're not super fan of this, but they come to me, and then when we are talking about something, they say, yeah, but everyone's doing it. I'm like, cool. So if everyone's doing it, that means that it's like the average person's doing it. Then they said to me, yeah. So if the average person is doing it, means you're not brilliant, you're just average. So maybe you shouldn't be doing what everyone's doing. Maybe you should be doing something different or something more or in a different way. And that's so it's actually just the changing the from, but everyone's doing it to, the average person's doing it. And the average person is the person that's surviving, and it's not the person that's the killer or not a real killer, but or the hunter. And that's the way I try and explain and try and teach my kids. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it backfires a lot of times, but I still believe in that. Every time I make a decision and it seems like it's what everybody does, then I go and sit and say to myself, okay, that's average. Do I want to be that?
Yeah, and it's so, and I guess also there's value in just at least reflecting on that and saying, is this average, yes or no? Because it could be like, but chances are if everybody's doing it, it's not might be the right thing to do, but it doesn't make it exceptional. It doesn't make it next level. And I want to bring that back to what we do in financial planning practices is where, what we deliver, our value propositions, how we engage with clients, it's the same as everybody else because that's the way we've been taught. So does that then mean we're average? And that's a big question to ask ourselves and to really go and sit and say, well, now going back to what you said earlier, it's the small things that make the big difference. Although the small thing will always stay the small thing. What's that small thing we can do to actually take it to the next level? So that's something to consider in your practice and in your business and even in your career. I don't think it's only just about running a practice or doing anything. You may be doing something else in the industry or the profession, and therefore that can make a big difference. I want to sort of ask you around, how do I identify that? So the one thing is, yes, if everybody's doing it, that kind of thing, that's one. Is there any other signpost along the way that would actually should or that is maybe screaming at me? I'm just choosing to ignore them. That look, but you're being average, Francois. Come, it's time to do something else.
Yeah, so I think, with my athletes, when we go over a race scenario, it's your mind, the fight or flight scenario in your mind is we change a little bit. It's not to flight, it's fight or survival. So you have a survival instinct and you have a winning or a killing instinct. And a lot of the times when there's unsurety or you just, you're not confident, then you start shifting back to a survival instinct into your race or your race situation. And that's when you're going to ask yourself the question, if what I do now so in our sports, like the next move I do now, will I for sure win or will I for sure not win? So it's, for example, if you're going into a really technical piece of riding in mountain biking, and you know that if you're not positioned well now, then for sure you will not win. But you can say to yourself, I'm not feeling good. So I don't want to go to the front now. I'm not really sure. So you're giving to the I'm not feeling good thoughts in your mind. Then you go into that difficult piece in the third or fourth position. For sure today you will not win. So that choice is a survival choice. But even if you're not feeling good and you know that choice you have to make now is the one that makes you win, then you have to go and make it. Whether you're going to win from it or not, it still gives you a chance to win and puts you in that position to go and win for that day. It doesn't go and it doesn't give you the resigned or the survival position of I will finish today. It takes you to I will win today. So yeah, it's choosing when there's decisions along the way. It's really going and pinpointing and saying, okay, that decision gives me a chance to win, or that decision gives me a chance to survive. And there's different scenarios you need to take into account. But most of the time, if you want to progress or into the top tier, it's the one that makes you win that you have to go and choose. And it's a fine choice. I had it the other day with two athletes. The one won the race and the other one didn't, and quite a big race. And the one guy made that choice, irrespective of if he was going to be good at it, he had to put himself in the position to give himself a chance to be good at it. And that was the two different choices made by two top pro athletes, and the one won the race and the one was second.
And I'm standing here thinking now, so I want to ask you this. If you think about all the things you just said, so it basically comes down to, well, one, you need to become aware around whether you're being average or not. Secondly, then you need to make a decision whether you're okay with that or not. And then thirdly, you need to take action. But my question now is, if you think about, like, whenever we talk about sports and pro athletes and things, like, we think about these highly competitive, highly driven individuals. And there's a lot of people watching that's going to go, I'm not competitive. It's just not in my personality. It's not in my nature. So my question then is being competitive or having a competitive nature a prerequisite for being above average?
No, it's not.
Being
You don't have to be.
exceptional, for that matter.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not a prerequisite. It's about reflecting on choice. So what we're doing is that it's easier. It's like television and a lot of social media. It's easier just to follow and get in the stream and not make decisions, make the small hard decisions or just small changes. So that's the easier thing to do. So the universe works that way. The universe wants us to go and say, okay, we need to go and back to chaos. We need to go and say, let's get the world back to sort of like a state of chaos. And the human nature is that energy that you produce to remove yourself from that state of chaos. So, but some people have huge steps in this, and those are the excellent athletes, the excellent mathematicians, the brilliant, folks out there, the 1%ers, they do that, and a lot of us aren't that. I mean, I don't even think I'm one of those. But you must respect and use that energy that they pioneered, and then play your part in small energy expenditures to also build a step and build on forward. So yeah, you don't have to be that super 1%er right at the edge of growing humanity, but you're going to have to do that little 1% of yourself to go with that flow of excellence. So it's small steps. Nothing big. It's just this one step. I'll sit today and I'll either go and just exercise. I'll sit today and say, okay, cool. I'm not going to go and ride the Cape Epic cycle tour, but I'll go and walk around the block, and it's something new. Or I'll just go and walk my dogs, or I'll put my phone down and spend time with family or whatever. So just one small good decision a day is one small good decision above the average that people say, oh, but everyone's doing it. So it's a thing that happens with bringing up children as well. Everyone's doing this now these days. All the kids are on that. It's our choice. It's not their choice. It's our choice to let them do it or not. And make small choices in a different direction and experiment and see. Stay curious.
Yeah, I love it. Barry's handle on Instagram, by the way, is Barry is Curious. So if you want to go check him out, like, he takes the most amazing photos and videos and things. His social media game on Instagram is really like next level. So you need to go and check that out. I want to get into the 3 traits. Like you and I spoke about this. There's sort of 3 traits or elements or aspects that every pro athlete would need in order to really become exceptional and be at the top of their game and the top of whatever sport that they are in. And these are 3, like this is actually the thing that triggered me to sort of get you on the show, Barry, because this is 3 things that apply to life, never mind to sport. And there was such a strong connection for me between the 2. And I want to get into these 3 and I mean, these 3 things, like, I mean, do you want to share that with us? And go like, okay, so these 3 things, and then we'll get into each one of them and why they're a requirement and everything. But just what are these 3 things?
Okay, yeah. So the 3 stresses in terms of performance is adversity, diversity, and intensity. They are used to sort of like grow or improve someone's adapt someone physically, mentally, and environmentally. So all the platforms of where you're going to go and perform is in my sport is physical, mental, and environmental adaptation, and the stresses for this will be your adversity, diversity, and intensity. For every person in every scenario, these things are in different ratios applicable to any of those 3 places that you want to go and develop in. So but yeah, I would have, for instance, an athlete in Denmark who their lifestyle is really organized and really well developed. So they have this space for energy to be focused on intensity. And when you come to Africa, you have to go and take an athlete in Africa, and there's so much adversity and diversity that they don't have the energy for intensity. So removing some of the things, creating stability from some others, these stresses are what you play around with to develop someone.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about intensity first. So what is when we talk about intensity, what is that actually about? Because that for me is about focus and being like, you know, they say being that killer or hunter or on that winning, like that's the focus. I need to be the best. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, so intensity is the one we want to achieve in pro sport or in high level sport. Is the one that you want someone to be able to focus on. So the adversity and diversity are mostly the detractors of this. But what it's important is that a detractor of something is also something you can go and train someone in. So if someone always gets detracted by adversity within the sport itself and outside the sport itself, you have to either remove it or make them used to it. And then when that happens, then they can focus on intensity. So it's really, really so one of the biggest goals in athlete development, especially in this field or right at the top end of sport, is really identifying which one of these is a trait that the athlete has inherent in them, and which one of them is something that's dragging them down. And then it's applying certain principles to get them used to the one, and then or removing adversity from the outside so that it's not applicable inside. So if you take it to a job, it's you have this inside the job and you have an outside the job, you know. And if you want to you know, progress to intensity and being able to focus on it, it's what have you done to manage the adversity and the diversity in your arena.
I mean, you do some interesting things to help some of these international. I mean, you literally bring people to South Africa, and then you do like quite interesting things with them, specifically, I think, with adversity, you know, to sort of, because adversity for me feels that is when something is out of the norm, you're out of your comfort zone, you know, you can't just focus on the intensity. So as you said, these things detract you from focusing on the intensity. So now there's these things happening, and for you, it's like, oh, my world is like upside down and all that kind of stuff. So what are the kind of things that you do with your athletes to help them with adversity, to not be so fazed by it or so influenced by it?
Yeah, so I have a phase of training called accumulation. Some other coaches call it base training, but accumulation is my accumulation of resilience. So mostly it's endurance and strength, but it's also endurance and strength in all your weaknesses, mentally and physically and environmentally. So I would take, for instance, an athlete that comes from an area where everything is always focused in sports, always, you know, manicured around them, that they can do everything. And I was like, cool, we're going to go and do a ride today. And I know that it stresses them that they can't go and do an exact ride as planned. So I'll get lost the whole time with them, or I'll show them wrong directions and I'll frustrate them. And you can see that frustrating building in the ride. And then I'd say, oh, but, you know, things don't always go your way. You have to manage it. You know, so then they have to still manage the day and still be satisfied with the day with all these me getting lost the whole time. Other things, I'll take them on different excursions, hiking or rock climbing or anything that's completely out of what they normally do. If they have fear of something, we try and face this fear in a responsible manner, but really just opening up. And it's quite amazing that I always say there's a certain gravitas that people attribute to something happening in their life, and a lot of this gravitas or weight that they attribute to a certain happening, whether it be in cycling, a puncture or a crash, is sometimes overly exaggerated because you're just carrying it with you. That's a bad thing that happened, when it's just a thing that happened. You know, it's for sure not beneficial, but it's not something you have to carry with you. You have to shake it off. So doing this adversity and diversity training helps them shake off the gravitas of negative things that happen around them. You know, it happens, deal with it, carry on, type of thing. And once you get a new programming in the mind that it understands that these things are not the end of the world, it's for sure not nice, but you can deal with it and carry on with your job, carry on with your goal of living intensely. Then you can see the big game. So taking them to the Cederberg heights, let them walk on ledges that are quite high or whatever. So it's different scenarios. For South Africans, they have to go their diversity or adversity in a European race is small roads and really lots of obstacles in the road, like we call it traffic furniture. And I'd let them ride on the cycle path to Cape Town in a big bunch, and not a big speed, but close to each other. And you can see that even at a lower speed, how tired they become because they have to focus on different things. And making that focus on the stuff, the noise around you, creating, I'd say, music from the noise so that you can be intense. that's one of the things that we do as well. So it's not specifically training the task, it's training the detractor from the task. And then when the detractor from your task becomes a normality or manageable, then you can focus on your intensity.
Yeah, and, there's something that comes out, and at the beginning of last year when I was driving down from Joburg to, sorry, to Cape Town to take my daughter's car there, it was sort of just a second. I know what's going on in my throat now, but I was just like, as I was going down, there were areas, because I've never driven down to Cape Town in my life. I've always flown. And just because I'm so much like time, my time is everything. Like I can't spend 12 hours in the car, driving somewhere and back. It's 24 hours. It becomes too much. But I had to drive down with a car, and I was just seeing all these different things and thinking how different people live and what their circumstances are and what they have to deal with, which is normal to them, but not normal to me. And something that's now jumping out of me that I haven't thought of before when we spoke about this is simply the fact that, now suddenly we get into this, like, if you really want to grow, then one of the things you need to do is then to put yourself in a different environment. So if you are getting uncomfortable with certain things, go put yourself in that environment to get comfortable with it, because you got comfortable with the environment you're in currently. And the only thing that really makes you uncomfortable is when, well, you have to learn something new that you don't know yet, or you have to develop a new skill, or your environment suddenly changes. Those are kind of, I think, the main things.
Yeah, the biggest thing I have with that is that when people do it, is that they tend to take too big a step. So I think it's a very, very popular, the flow zone is a very popular graph you can find on the internet. It's a place where you want to always be growing in or be developing in. So it's basically you have you have a new challenge and you have your skill, so your X and Y axis. And if you're above the flow zone, then you become anxious. And if you're below the flow zone, you become bored. But the important thing is to start bored and then just move up into, okay, I don't want to be bored anymore. You want to get to that place where it's exciting and where it's challenging, but you're not anxious. And then you learn there. And then when that becomes boredom again, or creates boredom again, you take one step up. So in any of these things, when you are adapting to adversity and diversity, don't be anxious in the step that you take into it, but just be slightly challenged and be excited about that challenge. And then when you do it, then when you've managed that, take the next step. When you manage that, take the next step. So you sort of like stay in this flow zone of challenge versus skill and just above boredom. And this is where I find the most learning and the most productive learning, because then your mind is not in a survival mode, it's in a progressive learning, excited mode. And the learning becomes permanent and not just a quick survival tool where you're missing a few gaps in the process.
Yeah, and one of the questions I wanted to ask you, like for a lot of us, it's fear. I mean, I've spoken about this at length with my wife, not just my fear for certain things, her fears for certain things. And fear is just a normal part of life. And we all have things that we sort of are afraid of. And sometimes it's horrific, and sometimes it's enough to make you uncomfortable. So in business and in financial planning, if you run your practice or you're building your career, developing your career and progressing, etc., there are definitely things that, sort of that your gut are telling you to do these things, but you're just too afraid to take that step. Because what if it doesn't work? What if, because nobody else is doing it? So I'm going to go out and do this. And So I'm going to go out and do this. They're going to think I'm a fool or a clown, or I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm being unprofessional, or whatever sort of dialogue we're telling ourselves, as Norma said, what we choose to believe or not. But if you think about that, like something you said now is, go and do things that challenge you. Or if you have a specific fear that you can in fact identify, go and try and face it head on. But I loved how you said responsibly. So what does that look like, maybe from a practical point of view, Barry? I know some of the things you said, take people go walk on ledges and do things like that. But if you take it back maybe to a business setting, I mean, what would you advise? Maybe what would your thoughts be on how can I face my fears, or how can I address these fears so that I actually turn it? Because I love how you said, turn the noise into music. So it's the same kind of thing here. Like, how do I change my fear into motivation and fear into something positive for myself?
So the noise into music, it's actually, if you take that, it's actually writing the first note, not just trying to play the whole song. And what is the first note? So it's identifying who you are and where you are. So being honest and saying, this is where I am. I have there's a big prevalence of skills coaches in mountain biking in South Africa, and they've got, it looks cool to do X, Y, Z, and they love to do this type of things. But they don't go back right down to the fundamental of what is the basic fear of where it's originating, and when we get to the mountain bike side or the road bike side, it's a lot of times about just balancing on your bike or just being comfortable to balance. And once that is done, and once that weighting is done, you do the next step. So in business, it's like, just if you have to write music from noise, you're gonna go and say, okay, cool, can I write music? No. What is music? You go back to, can I write? Do I have paper? Do I have a pen? So it's always really going right back to the basic point of, do you have all the tools? And then when you have all the tools, then you go the next step. So if there's a fear, most of those fears are generated by not having the tools to conquer them. And then we go into them, it's like, go back to the song, go write the song. There's a sheet of paper and notes, but you haven't even asked the person, can you write? Are you comfortable with writing, or which language do you write in? So that's when, if you don't have someone helping with this, a coach in your business, it's where you go into yourself and you say, okay, where am I? If I want to make music from noise, can I write? Yes, I can write. Okay, do I have a pen? No, let me go buy a pen. So if you have a fear of a new step, it's identifying all the small things. Most of the time we make the step just a little bit too big, because when you YouTube something, you Google something, it always takes you from like a medium perspective or an intermediate step upwards, but it never identifies just the small basic fear or the basic nuance that's just stopping you from identifying or growing out of that fear. So really sitting down and being honest and breaking it down to very simple, very slow. I do a lot of times we do some flow training in terms of the downhills, and if I want to just remind myself of doing something proper, I go down to snail speed and I understand the connection that I have with my bike and my terrain, and then I carry on. So in business, the only thing, I'm not a great financial planner. I plan human performance, but I think it would most probably be the same in terms of just slowing it down to the manageable aspects that you can handle at that speed that you're at, identifying the one that you struggle with, and then work on it. That's
awesome.
the first step.
Barry, thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I've got loads of questions I still want to ask, but I'm out of time. Thank you so much. It was brilliant. I'll definitely catch up with you afterwards, but thank you so much for your time, for everything that you shared. Keep on doing the great work, enjoying your life, and just doing good stuff. I just want to add on to what you ended off on now, where once you've done that, be patient, be consistent. But being patient also doesn't mean that you need to take your time. You drive that intensity part and get things done, but be patient. It'll come. So that's sort of my big advice on the back of what Barry has shared with us this morning. Barry, thank you so much. Wish you all the best.
Thank you for having me, and have a good day, everybody else.
Good stuff. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. Remember to check out the live show, Propulsion Live, on YouTube every Friday at 7 a.m. South African time. You can find it at www.propulsion.co.za/live. That's propulsion.co.za/live. And please remember to subscribe, share with your colleagues, your friends, and anyone who may find value like you did in this podcast. Once again, thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next episode.